Good morning, everyone. Before we formally begin, we wish to inform our audience of the following house rules for the smooth conduct of this online activity. We wish to request everyone to kindly mute your microphones if you are not speaking to avoid unwanted noise and feedback. A question and answer session will commence after the panel discussion. All questions and comments shall be directed to the question and answer box for those in the meeting room and to the comments section for those streaming live via Facebook. Please make sure to state your name and organization before your question or comment. We shall gather the questions to be read by the moderator and the host during the panel discussion. For everyone's information, this webinar is being recorded and streamed via the official Facebook page of UNDP Philippines. Thank you very much, and we look forward to your cooperation. Welcome to Rising Together, Lessons from Pintig Lab's Data Innovation Portfolio for Data-Driven Solutions. We are honored and grateful that you have taken the time to join us this morning. My name is Charlene Balaan of UNDP Philippines, and I am your host for this morning's brief program. Indeed, COVID-19 changed life as we all know it. At the onset of this spread, the world was forced to shut down as we all scrambled to find solutions to the myriad of interconnected health, political, and socioeconomic challenges that continuously surfaced. At the height of the crisis, daily management, analysis, and communication of data have increasingly become crucial for decision making. Lives and livelihoods were at stake, and we needed data-driven policies to guide the country as we all navigated through what is known as the new normal. Thus entered the Pintig Lab, a network of data scientists, economists, political scientists, and epidemiologists tasked to provide data-driven support to our partners in areas of data management, systems development, digital innovation, capacity building, and policy analysis. In the initial stage, the Pintig Lab was mobilized immediately to support partners for the COVID-19 response and recovery strategies. Now, as partnerships and initiatives progressed, using the lessons that the Pintig Lab learned, it has broadened its scope to address other pressing development challenges for medium to long-term planning, in the Philippines through data-driven policymaking, capacity building for the government, and strengthening the Sustainable Development Goals ecosystem in the Philippines. Today, with the support of our partners, we are here to unpack these lessons and to see how best we can all leverage on our data science communities as we continue trudging on the long path to recovery. To formally open this morning's program, we will all hear from the resident representative of the United Nations Development Program, Dr. Selva Ramachandran. Dr. Ramachandran, a Malaysian national, is a seasoned development practitioner. Prior to his appointment at the UNDP Philippines, he served as the UNDP resident representative and country director of UNDP Sudan, UNDP country director in Libya, chief of Northeast Asia and Mekong Division at the Regional Bureau of Asia and the Pacific in New York, and UNDP country director in Yemen. Esteemed guests, allow me to turn over the floor to Dr. Selva Ramachandran. Over to you, Dr. Selva.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Cha. Good morning. Greetings to all participants and our esteemed panelists and guests. It is my great pleasure to be here with you today in the discourse on how we can strengthen data-driven communities for COVID-19 response and recovery and long-term development in the Philippines. As also mentioned by Cha earlier, after the first reported cases of COVID-19 and the declaration of a state of public health emergency in the Philippines in March 2020, we witnessed how Philippines' economic growth plunged while the unemployment rate reached 18.9% in April 2020. As the pandemic impacted all sectors of the economy, large portion of the population were significantly impacted. According to estimates, about 1.5 to 5 million Filipinos have potentially been fell back into poverty by the pandemic, reversing all gains made since 2015. Like many other countries, The Philippines is now facing not only challenges posed by COVID-19, but also its impact on socioeconomic development. Aside from this, the Philippines is set to undergo important transitions in 2022 with upcoming national elections and the implementations of the Mandanas ruling, where local governments are projected to get more budget from the national tax allocations. Given this, it is important now more than ever to ensure inclusive and sustainable recovery. Because of this unprecedented crisis and with that upcoming transitions, policymakers continue to face an environment of uncertainty where access to accurate data and timely data is vital. To support the country's response to this situation, UNDP Philippines launched the Pintig Lab. It's a network of data scientists, economists, political scientists, and epidemiologists working together to provide the government, the public, as well as health and development workers, data-driven system and policy insights for better COVID-19 response recovery strategies. As misinformation continues to be a challenge today, people who work on data have a great opportunity to contribute better quality information to people of all walks of life. Data may seem intimidating at first, but we can work together to make this more understandable and geared towards informed action. Both national and local governments will need data to drive and create crucial decisions that set the path towards country's future. The Pintig Lab, together with our partners, explored using various data innovations to share valuable insight and approaches in data analytics and data science. By telling this story, we hope to spur each one of you here to take part in this great purpose. Ultimately, by holding this forum together with the Analytics Association of the Philippines, we aim to inspire ideas for socioeconomic recovery and development by learning from the experience of the Pintig Lab and its partners. Today, we will hear from esteemed panelists who have been invited to shed light on important concerns regarding data, as well as its application to their own areas of work. We have experts ranging from national and regional governments to the academia, the private sector, and civil society. Hopefully, through this initiative, we can even push further by driving important discussions and instigate sustainable transformational actions regarding data security and privacy, data governance, data innovation, or policy innovations. Lastly, we hope these discussions to contribute to the re-energized movement towards the achievement of sustainable development goals. We have an exciting program ahead of us. We have with us Undersecretary Gregory, the Director General Ali, who have been steadfast partners of UNDP. We also acknowledge the presence of our respected panelists, Honorable Francisco Cruz, Assistant Secretary of the DILG, Ms. Pia, Director for Social Impact and Special Projects of Thinking Machines, Ms. Rebecca Malay, Trustee of PRRM, and Professor Francisco, Senior Fellow at the Dersal University, who all took time of the busy schedule to join with us. Thank you, dear colleagues. We are also honored to have with us Undersecretary Christian Ablan, who shall lead our call to actions later on. Again, may I take this event spark your interest and imagination. Thank you, and may all find fruitful use of data development for people and for the planet. Looking forward to a fruitful discussions and deliberations. Over to you, Chuck.
Thank you so much, Dr. Selva. Today, we are also honored to be supported by the Analytics Association of the Philippines, one of UNDP's most trusted partners in our work for data-driven analytics support to the local government here in the Philippines. Our next speaker to deliver his opening message is Mr. Colin Christie, an international executive, serial entrepreneur, global connector, educator, and digital leader. He is a co-founder of the Analytics Association of the Philippines and serves as the president of its board of trustees. Colin is the Executive Director of Global Chamber Manila, Managing Director of MedCode Inc., CEO of Navigant Health Inc., Independent Director of Now Corporation, and a Director of LifeTrack Medical Systems Incorporated. Colin has been doing business in the Philippines for over 2 decades. He earned his degree in chemical engineering from the University of California, Berkeley. Turning over the floor to you, Mr. Christie.
Thanks very much, Shar, and hello to everyone. I'd like to add my welcome to all in the audience, and thanks for attending today's event. Good morning also to today's esteemed speakers, panelists, and distinguished guests, and also to the team behind the scenes who have worked hard to make today's event possible. I'd like to extend my appreciation to you, Dr. Salva, and to your team at the UNDP Philippine Country Office and at the Pintig Lab, including Riza Halili, Project Manager, Jonathan Hodder, OIC of the Impact Advisory Team, Dr. Reyes, Chief Technical Advisor, Dominic Legault, Data Scientist, Trina Cases, Data Analyst, and many other members of your team. I'd also like to welcome my fellow officers and members of the Board of Trustees of AAP, including our Vice President, Michelle Alacon, our Treasurer, Bam Villatuya, Corporate Secretary, Dominic Legault, and our trustees, former Undersecretary, Mon Ibrahim, Carlo Panti, Professor Rex Jallo of UP Diliman, and Assistant Professor Arturo Tungan of the UST. Also to our recently appointed Executive Director, Sherwin Palayo. The Analytics Association Philippines is pleased to be in this partnership with the UNDP Philippine Country Office in supporting the important work of the Pintic Lab. And we congratulate you for the past 22 months of providing support to the Philippine government on implementing data-driven solutions to respond and recover from the COVID-19 crisis. The central objective of today's stakeholders forum is to call for support for the vision of building data analytics and data science communities for COVID-19 response, and indeed for response and recovery, and indeed for long-term development. AAP fully supports this vision, which aligns very well with our vision of a healthy and vibrant Philippines ecosystem comprised of the government, private sector, academia, and professionals using analytics for the good of society. We look forward to our continued collaboration with UNDP and the Pintig Labs. Let me just say a few words about AAP. We're a non-stock, nonprofit membership organization founded in 2018 with the mission to develop the ecosystem that makes the Philippines a data-driven country, globally competitive in analytics, and a leading source of analytics talent for the good of society. As part of our mission, AAP has been lobbying for shared common definition of analytics, as well as defining a set of analytics job families with corresponding skills and competencies. These definitions were encapsulated in professional and organizational maturity models published and promoted by AAP since 2019. We conduct frequent events in support of this mission, and I invite you to visit our website at aap.ph or just follow us on Facebook. I know that we have an exciting lineup in the program for you today, and we're all eager to learn more. So with that, congrats again to the team, and I'll turn you back over to our host. Thank you. Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat.
Thank you so much, Mr. Christie. Before we proceed with the presentations that we have prepared for our audience today, we would like to first ask our audience to please let us know what group or industry are you from. Our Mentimeter link is flashed on your screens. Your response will be of great help to us. Thank you everyone for your cooperation. All right. Moving on to the next part of our program, our first presentation entitled Back to Creation, the Pintig Lab Concept will be given by Mr. Jonathan Hodder. He's currently the officer in charge for UNDP Philippines' Impact Advisory Team, where the Pintig Lab core team is a part of. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thanks, Joe. So for the longest time, the development sector, so primarily government, development agencies, and also civil society organizations, we've relied on traditional sources of data, such as surveys, technical assessments, and evaluation reports. But over the past couple of years, really brought on by the acceleration of digitalization, we now have new data sets available to us, primarily emanating from the private sector. And we have a global pulse lab based in Jakarta that looks into the potential of this private sector harnessed for development purposes. So they were looking, for example, at satellite imagery to see how this can be used to monitor displaced people after disasters. They were also looking at mobility statistics from Grab and other food delivery services to monitor or determine the relationship with air quality. So we decided to hold similar discussions in the Philippines with a number of big companies here. And we dived into their data together. And very quickly, we saw people's eyes open and smiles go across the faces, because both us and even themselves who were sitting on top of the data, we didn't realize that depth of potential that it could be used for positive gain. So this is why we decided to set up a data lab where we would try to unlock this door to this alternative universe that's existing alongside us of data sets, and see if we could bring it in and harness it for development purposes. Now, this was before COVID-19, but when it hit us really hard in March, this is where the demand for data really shot up at an unprecedented level. And while we were having our discussions with government partners to really understand the priorities and the needs, I wanted to paraphrase the former DICT secretary. It was a former military man. I thought he phrased it so well, that in the pandemic, when we first started, we were essentially fighting an invisible enemy. You know, it's in the air, it's on our clothes, it's in our households, but we needed data so that we were able to see it. You know, we needed data so we could have that fighting chance. And so this is where we really had to accelerate our plans to set up the Pintig Lab. It's the multidisciplinary network really tasked with providing data-driven support to the government's COVID response and recovery strategy. And we wanted to, where appropriate, harness both traditional and non-traditional sources of data, and also to be nimble and to be flexible and harness existing capacities for the cause. So we don't build something new unless it's absolutely necessary. Where there are existing capacities there, particularly local capacities, let's bring them in, let's help with the customization and apply it for the COVID response and recovery efforts. So we just wanted to give you a snapshot of what that landscape was for the first couple of months during the pandemic. And this is where all the partners really had to bolt in to set up that data system for the COVID response. And this is primarily with partners in the Department of Health and also DICT and the private sector and development agencies. Of course, we had to look at data collection and management. How do we get the data from the laboratories? How do we get it from the public in such an efficient and clean and rapid way that was accurate enough to make sound analysis on? This is where WHO set up the COVID Kaya platform. This is where Philinvest played a key role in building those data pipelines between the labs and the Department of Health. And this is where we also helped with the data quality aspect, and we sent in a number of data managers into the Department of Health to help out with that. And you'll hear from Undersecretary Vaheri later that she actually created an ad hoc team for this purpose within the department that's now been institutionalized. We provided some support for data visualization, which we'll go into a little bit later. And I must commend the Department of Health for this, because they made a decision very early on to make this data public, the anonymized data sets public as well. And that really helps with public trust. And it also helps with pushing it to the broader community so that they could use it for their own analysis. So we have independent groups like those from UP, and Okta, who run their own analysis. We also had the Ateneo de Manila University using the FASTER platform, customizing it for COVID, and AI for Gov also setting up Tanod contra COVID in the Kira chatbot. These are two systems which were eventually transitioned into government. So they started outside, but then they became insourced. And they provide important analysis, which is pushed to government, particularly the IATF for decision-making. And then also for policy development as well. And in an ideal world, this would have been phased, but because it was a crisis and we needed it yesterday, everything was pretty much done at the same time. So it was incredibly chaotic, at least for the first few months. But if we look at where we started in March to where we got to in, let's say, September, 6 months after that, you know, the leap which Department of Health and other partners had made was really quite astounding. And we do need to do an assessment of this, but we're pretty sure that this has not been done before, this level of accelerated development in terms of data. We haven't seen this before in the Philippines in terms of this kind of pace. So it was very impressive. Just to give you an idea into some of the systems and capacities that the Pintig Lab helped out with, we set up the Command and Control Center for the National Task Force to help them monitor the tests. And this helps with their test, trace, and treat strategy, as well as the vaccination platform. Thinking machines represented by Pia later this morning, we really worked around the clock to get this done. AI for Gov set up the Tanod contra COVID, and some of you might be familiar with the Kira chatbot. So if you go onto the DOH Facebook page or the Viber messages, this is where the chatbot will ask you of your symptoms. And this is important data needed for syndromic surveillance. And DOH now have the ambition to utilize this kind of technology, not just for COVID, but for the other diseases under their universal healthcare program, which is really encouraging to see. And then, of course, we have the FAST platform, which is now government system to be able to monitor the state of transmission at the national, the regional, and the local government level, and also what those projected cases would be 3 months from now, those different scenarios. And that helps to trigger anticipatory response, both at the interagency task force and also now with DILG support, localizing this so local governments have this capability and are able to make decisions ahead of time. So it's more anticipatory rather than reactive. And some of the results that we've seen from this, in that span of 6 months from when we started to where we are now, we've seen the reporting time really shortened from 26 days to under 24 hours. And some of the data that was pushed to the interagency task force, according to one cabinet secretary, informed decisions that prevented up to 3.5 million infections in 2020. Now, aside from the capacity development and systems work, the Pintig Lab also helped in a number of policy areas and researches. We had worked with the Commission on Human Rights to look at social listening and in particular how to communicate human rights messaging in different ways, which includes human rights issues that really emerged and were accentuated under the pandemic. We also worked with BARM to understand the socioeconomic impact of the pandemic on the region as well. But one of the policy studies that I wanted to highlight was stemming from a request from NEDA for us to look at vaccine acceptance. And this is where we partnered with data scientists from AAP's partner Seralytics and internally within the team to apply the social and behavior change communications framework to the problem. So this time last year, just before we were about to start the vaccination rollout, vaccine hesitancy, according to one survey, was at 52%. Which isn't a great place for us. And while the vaccines were on its way, we certainly needed to have a communications program publicly to try and raise that level of acceptance. And the communications messages at the time, they were very science-based, very factual, very text-heavy, a lot of tables and statistics. And this is important, and it works for a specific segment of the population, but it wasn't resonating with others from different regions, from different backgrounds, and so on. And so this is where the team decided to conduct social listening, apply this framework to identify what are those spectrums of opinions across the population? You know, what are those different audience segments? And then from here, after understanding their biases and their reasons for thinking in the way that they do, we now have additional data with which to design communications products that are now targeted and designed specifically to resonate with different sectors of the population. So this is why we're now seeing much more varied communication products when it comes to promoting vaccine acceptance. We also monitor the level of vaccine acceptance as well across the different regions. We have our data scientist, AJ Lumba, which is working with DOH closely on this. And we see where we first started, you know, the situation wasn't great when we first started the monitoring in October 2021, but we now see a marked improvement across the regions, fast forwarding to today. So to sum up the Pintig Lab of where we are right now, we work in 3 specific areas: capacity development in the use of data for development planning and budgeting, data-driven policy research to inform decision-making, and also helping promote the strengthening of data governance frameworks as well for national and also for local governments. And there are a number of guiding principles as well, which we try to adhere to. Harnessing both traditional and non-traditional data where it's appropriate, where we feel it's beneficial. Co-creating with our partners, so we don't necessarily have products in the garage which to sell. We do want to listen to our partners first, understand what the needs are, harness existing systems and solutions if they're appropriate, and if we do need to build, then we build it together with our client. And also a principle which is borrowed from Dominic Ligot, who will be facilitating a session later. I thought he phrased this so eloquently and so well, is to operate in this nexus between hard science and social science. You know, we've reached a state now when it comes to technology, we can pretty much do everything. As long as we can think it, we can have it in our hands. But the problem is no longer necessarily that aspect of the work. You know, the problem now is when it comes to building that acceptance, when it comes to getting that yes, when it comes to the execution of the solution. That's where the problem is now. And hard science will only take us so far. This is where social science comes in to understand what that problem is. How do we unlock the door so that the hard science can take effect? So this is where economics, this is where psychology, this is where political science and all the other disciplines become so important to us. And it's why we want to keep this practice multidisciplinary and work with as many experts in the field as possible. And finally, the principle that we certainly want to keep supporting is to help build this community. My colleague, Reyes, later on will be talking about the kind of work Pintig Lab will be doing beyond COVID, looking at issues in climate change and political empowerment. And it would certainly be great to work with some of you in those fields. That's it from me, Cha. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jonathan, and thank you for sharing with us the story of how Pintig Lab begun and how it played a crucial role in helping bring together all stakeholders to make sense of data, both traditional and non-traditional, in the beginning of the pandemic, as you said, to have a fighting chance against COVID-19. It truly has been a journey for all of the partners involved in the initiative in the last 22 months. Moving on to our next presentation, we have a presentation about how the Department of Health transitioned into engaging a community of data managers and experts to aid COVID-19 response and recovery, saving lives one day at a time, and share the lessons it learned from these data-related engagements. Here to discuss on how we can build a data community for health response and recovery, we have a video presentation from Dr. Maria Rosario C. Vergere, Undersecretary for the Public Health Services Team of the Department of Health and the official spokesperson of the DOH. She was previously the OIC Undersecretary for Health Regulation Team and Assistant Secretary in charge of the Public Health Services Team. She also acted as OIC Deputy Director General for Field Regulatory Operation for the Food and Drug Administration and Chief of the Health Research Division of the Health Planning Department, Development and Planning Bureau, rather. Here is a video from Dr. Vergere.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to be your guest speaker to discuss the government's COVID-19 response and its engagement with experts and data managers. I would like to recognize the efforts of the UNDP Philippines headed by Dr. Selva Ramachandran for organizing this event. Today, I would like to share with you how the Department of Health transitioned into engaging a community of data managers and experts to aid our COVID-19 response and recovery. I will also share with you the lessons we learned from our data-related engagements with the Pintig Lab of UNDP Philippines. The COVID-19 pandemic constitutes a significant challenge to the Philippine healthcare system. Although no country was spared in this global health crisis, it has undoubtedly highlighted existing gaps in our healthcare system. During our response to this pandemic, we remain cognizant of the fact that our resources were limited, and as such, prioritization must be done. This must exhibit fairness and transparency. Supposing that there may arise conflict of rules or guidelines, human dignity and the safety and needs of the individuals shall prevail. Knowing that there are existing gaps in our healthcare system, we must and have continued to uphold the intrinsic human dignity of each and every person by endeavoring to set up our guiding principles in the national government's response against this pandemic, which are having a multi-sectoral approach is crucial, and the second would be data-driven decision-making matters, and 3, communication is key. The COVID-19 pandemic has posed a significant challenge to various sectors of society in our country, and it continues to affect the lives of many Filipinos. What started out as a health crisis transitioned into becoming a socio-economic crisis. The Philippine economic growth rate plunged, many people lost their jobs, and businesses had to close, among others. All of this happened very quickly. For the past 2 years, it has been evident that a national government-enabled, local government-led approach to a people-centered response is needed in order to successfully address the public health emergency. Responding to this public health emergency requires an enhanced and empowered partnership among the national government, the local government units, and the civil society. In addition, regional and global partnerships proved to be an important aspect of addressing this pandemic in terms of disease control and prevention. After all, increase in travel and diplomatic relations prove that the countries are interconnected more than ever. When COVID-19 was discovered in our country, the Department of Health activated the Incident Management Team as well as the Emergency Operations Center. Crucial decisions were taken by the Interagency Task Force and the Interagency Technical Working Group for the management of emerging infectious diseases, consisting of key government agencies like the Department of Foreign Affairs, the Department of Tourism, the Department of Interior and Local Government, among others. Then, eventually, as we realized that implementation has been a great challenge, the National Task Force was formed. The national government, through the Department of Health, the Interagency Task Force, and the National Task Force, enables our local governments by developing policies and strategies and providing support in implementation and coordination through rollout plans, resource mobilization, and operations monitoring. Our local governments, through their local chief executives, had been the lead as the primary responders in the implementation and service delivery to the community. Thus, the role of our local governments had been pivotal in achieving our objectives, which was to provide a people-centered response. While the private sector, civil society organizations, non-government organizations, and development partners form essential and vital support in our response against COVID-19. With the PDITR Plus strategy, all stakeholders need to be on board for these plans to work. I would like to highlight the strong collaboration among different stakeholders from the different national agencies, development partners, academic institutions, and the private sector. This allowed for improvement in data management since data flow has been one of the greatest challenges the DOH faces. Evidence has steered and shall continue to direct our decision-making from the institutional down to the individual levels. This shall empower every Filipino in making informed health choices to protect themselves against COVID-19. We have to keep in mind that science is evolving and decision-making at the institutional and individual levels are crucial. Implementing evidence-based strategies based on historical as well as the current data is critical, rather than acting based on what is politically opportune. Decisions made from validated data ensure that the limited resources are optimally guided by fair and transparent priority setting. Since the start of the pandemic, data flow from disease reporting units like hospitals, healthcare facilities, and laboratories had been very challenging. Several issues were being faced from collection to validation and to reporting. In terms of collection, not all local governments, laboratories, and hospitals report complete, accurate, and timely information to DOH through official channels. Also, the validation process of submitted data is multifold. Validation at the source, validation at the collection sites, and pre-analysis causes delays in reporting. It was by this time when the UNDP Philippines Pintig Lab, an advanced data analytics team, helped the department work with its data managers, artificial intelligence for public services, and thinking machines. With them, we tried to apply data science solutions immediately to address our pressing concerns with the support of other partners, including WHO and UNICEF. The strong coordination among different sectors intensified our data management systems from data collection to governance to analysis. Through the WHO, UNDP, development partners, partner agencies, and the private sector, we were able to launch COVID Kaya, DOH Data Collect, COVID Document Repository System or CDRS, the FASTER models, and DOH Tracker, among others. These applications and platforms enabled the enhancement on the accuracy, completeness, and timeliness of our data. To gather the needed data, we received data inputs from 3 repositories, from COVID Kaya, from the CDRS or the COVID Documents Repository System, and the DOH Data Collect. Data is typically gathered from our epidemiology and surveillance units and our healthcare facilities, both public and private. COVID Document Repository System or CDRS is a system being used by licensed laboratories to upload laboratory results and case investigation forms for COVID-19 surveillance. In coordination with PhilInvest's work on the new CDRS, the daily testing backlog was reduced from 17,000 in July to 0 in December of 2020. Furthermore, the median COVID-19 case reporting delay went down from 26 days to just 1 day from September to November of 2020. In the same period, death reporting delays also went down from 15 days to 6 days. Currently, 324 licensed COVID-19 testing facilities reports to the CDRS, which are later pushed to COVID Kaya. COVID Kaya, on the other hand, consolidates data being reported via CDRS from the national, the regional, and the local government health facilities to investigate, identify, and isolate exposed or possibly infected individuals and minimize COVID-19 transmission. Initially developed by the Dure Technologies, this was later donated to the Department of Health and is currently maintained and managed by the Department of Information and Communications Technology Management Service. Currently, COVID Kaya has 7,366 users reporting the cases in their respective local governments daily. In addition, version 2.0 of COVID Kaya is being developed by DICT to enhance its capacity and its users' experience. Lastly, the DOH Data Collect is an application that collects data inputs from hospitals and quarantine facilities. Data from its application are used to quantify the state of our healthcare systems through monitoring of indicators such as utilization rates of the different hospital resources, and it enhances the health status information of COVID-19 confirmed cases. With the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic, one of our major responses was the formation of the Epidemiology Bureau's COVID-19 Surveillance and Quick Action Unit, or the CISCAO. Its main objective is to enable prompt action with the support and use of data and surveillance information to appropriate an effective COVID-19 response. Its mechanism of action focuses on collection, validation, and harmonization of data, ensuring data quality, monitoring and analyzing data patterns, and recommending actions based from the analysis done. The Sub-Technical Working Group on Data Analytics of the IATF is one of our group of experts, both from the public and the private sector. One of its main roles is to provide accurate and timely aggregation and analysis of pertinent data regarding COVID-19. As we know that this pandemic is not a health problem alone, we have convened with experts in different fields to provide relevant policy recommendations to the Interagency Task Force. These recommendations include decision framework for community quarantine and the LGU risk classifications. To help the government monitor key statistics related to COVID-19, the FASTER platform, which was originally designed to monitor diseases like measles, dengue, and typhoid fever, was repurposed for COVID-19 response and recovery planning. FASTER, developed by a team led by Dr. Regina Estuar of Ateneo de Manila University, had been at the core of processing, managing, and communicating data to government offices and the public. The FASTER platform, which UNDP Philippines supported, was able to show dashboards that describes the health status, healthcare capacity, socioeconomic risk classifications, security indices, and time series projections. Specifically, this presented updates on COVID-19 cases, hospital requirements, testing requirements, and community system requirements, among others. This aided in informing the national government, the local government units, and the public better to gain fuller understanding of the situation, which enabled more contextualized response and recovery efforts. All knowledge generated from several data analyses need to be properly cascaded to allow government to respond appropriately. Additionally, the Department of Health is mandated to inform the public of the country's situation. Hence, communication is crucial, which leads me to my final lesson. Effective communication is key to addressing this crisis. It entails risk perception, rumor management, and addressing information gaps. The Department of Health has to strive to contain the pandemic while communicating with the public and being transparent and accurate in relaying information. With our communication strategies, we are preparing the public for what is coming next through enabling members of the community, all while expressing a degree of empathy in communicating policies. The science regarding COVID-19 is continuously and rapidly evolving, and because of the current advances in technology, there is a huge volume of data available for everybody. This can be a two-edged sword. For one, when information is used properly, it capacitates agencies such as the DOH to make decisions and implement guidelines. However, it can also be used to take advantage of the current situation and incite reaction from the public. For example, fake news. Since there is that shift towards online sources and social networks, the DOH Communication Management Unit frequently monitors public reaction. However, we are more keen on the information the media releases to the public because the media really has a huge influence on the public. We try to call out our media partners who sometimes modify our statements, which causes the public to misconstrue the department's statements. We also have 24/7 journalism. In our experience, we receive media questions 24/7, and we also appreciate these queries. The overall goal of DOH risk communication is to build and maintain public trust and confidence with the Department of Health as the National Health Authority, and to provide rapid, reliable, and accurate information for the public to act on and to protect their health. The COVID-19 pandemic has pushed everyone to transfer and convene on the digital stage. This is where a lot of false information are, and the DOH is cognizant of this fact. In order to facilitate the rapid dissemination of correct and reliable information, we engage the public through various digital platforms. With the data gathered from our varied data repositories, we transform this into information released through health advisories and case bulletins, through public engagements on the DOH website, Facebook, and Viber. We also release frequently asked questions, social media cards, audiovisual presentations for TV and online resources. We also update the public regularly with situational reports on the status of our regions, healthcare utilization, as well as testing and vaccination efforts. We also recognize the role of media with regards to disseminating the correct information. For this, we hold regular media fora and press briefings to discuss about the most up-to-date and correct information about the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as other issues that may affect health. This will be my last slide. The COVID-19 pandemic created a huge demand for data throughout the world. More than 2 years into the COVID-19 crisis, much had been done to innovate on how we gather, handle, use, and share data. Having a multi-stakeholder and whole-of-society approach in mitigating the effects of the COVID-19 crisis proved to be an effective approach. The Philippine government cannot solve the crisis on our own. That is why we are thankful to all of our partner agencies for their continued support. The COVID-19 response further highlighted the importance of a well-established information system that we can use to inform decision-making. Data-driven response is not only vital in this pandemic, but for all other health problems as well. As a matter of fact, we are left with only less than 10 years to achieve our commitments for the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. For all of these, data will be much needed, especially with the greater uncertainties this transition shall bring. Thus, we call upon you today to participate. Much can be done with data and multi-stakeholder collaboration. And by helping strengthen data workflows, systems, and infrastructure in the country, you shall be able to help government make better decisions, which can also help the people close to you. Thank you and good morning to all of you.
Dr. Verheer's video presentation really showcased how important a data-driven response and a whole-of-society approach are, especially right now at this point of our response and recovery work for COVID-19. Our next presenter is supposed to be Engineer Mohajirin T. Ali, the Director General of the Bangsamoro Planning and Development Authority.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. We're very happy to have you with us this morning. I was told that you were initially having some technical difficulties a while ago, but we are very happy that you are here with us. So, Engineer Mohajirin T. Ali is currently the Director General of the Bangsamoro Planning and Development Authority. He is here with us this morning to share insights regarding BPDA's views and lessons regarding the value and use of socioeconomic impact assessments in helping the Bangsamoro government assess the situation of Bangsamoro people and in using data, including the Bangsamoro Development Tracker, to get insights regarding the government and economy to inform recovery planning. So without further ado, I will turn it over to DG Ali for his presentation. Over to you, DG.
Yeah. Is my audio clear po?
Yes, you're coming in clear, sir.
You. Yes. Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. My courtesy po for those who are present here today, especially to the UNDP. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My utmost courtesy to my fellow BARM government officials and employees, and my sincere appreciation to our development partners, especially United Nations Development Program, UNDP, and to Analytics Association of the Philippines, AAP, for inviting me as a guest speaker for this important event, the Pintig Lab Stakeholders Forum. Since the foundation of the Bangsamoro Planning and Development Authority, BPDA, by virtue of Bangsamoro Autonomy Act number 06, with the same law, particularly providing for the legal basis for the formulation of the Bangsamoro Economic and Development Council, BEDC, we have seriously taken our mandate as a means to achieve our long aspirations, the upliftment of the lives of our Bangsamoro people and the establishment of the foundation of our self-governance and identity as a Bangsamoro. This goal has become the fundamental basis of our development framework, reflected in the first Bangsamoro Development Plan 2020 to 2022. The BEDC as a socioeconomic planning, monitoring, and coordinating agency for all development plans, programs, and projects of the Bangsamoro government is mandated to evaluate and recommend short, medium, and long-term comprehensive development plans, programs, and projects of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region for the approval by the Bangsamoro Parliament. It is the duty of our office, the BPDA, to backstop the BEDC as its technical secretariat in addition to our function as the planning and policy coordinating authority of the Bangsamoro government. It is our primary mandate to direct, and recommend for its approval, the monitoring, and evaluation programs implemented by the national government, Bangsamoro ministries, agencies, offices, local government units, and development partners in the BARM. Let me share the BPDA insights on how the UNDP contributed to the progress of BDP despite the ongoing transition and the pandemic. BDA's current way of working operation in terms of monitoring, tracking, consolidation, and reporting of BARM ministries, offices, and agencies, programs and projects, PAPs, and accomplishment are initially done manually and personally. Our usual work is not only challenged by the heavy load of office work through simultaneous conduct of meetings, trainings, and activities, monitoring, and coordination, but also the effects and restriction caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite all these challenges, we understand that as a government office, we are required to adhere to the seal of transparency and report to the higher authority and the people our annual accomplishment. In BPDA, however, we continuously find ways to deliver. We are deliberate in finding ways and in making innovations to deliver our mandate with quality and consistency. Specifically, we aim to speed up the process of the consolidation of reports and would like to resort to online tracking, monitoring, and reporting. So timely that our development partner, the UNDP, offered support for this endeavor, and through its Pintig Lab Project, the partnership was realized through the conduct of series of planning, meetings, and trainings until the Bangsamoro Development Tracker, BDT, project became a reality. The initiatives we engage with the UNDP is an interactive dashboard that intends to present the data of the first Bangsamoro Development Plan, BDP, in a visual and engaging manner. The overall goal is to launch this dashboard to the public as part of BARM's commitment to data transparency and good governance. Specifically, our objective is to create an interactive dashboard featuring the macroeconomic trends, updates of the first BDP, speed up the process of the consolidation of accomplishment reports, and scale up monitoring and evaluation M&E system of the programs, projects, and activities of the ministries, offices, and agencies in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. To assist in the data collection, the BPDA team developed a set of tools to make the data submission easier for agencies. Each agency will maintain their own master file, which will serve as the primary source of their data. Access to the sheet will be allowed only in the data collections period to ensure that the data provided is official and final. All changes and updates in the future will be through this single sheet to avoid errors from handling and exchange of multiple files. Edit access of the agencies outside this period may be allowed only with the discretion of the PDA. We have high hopes that this Bangsamoro Development Tracker will take us to the next level. Yet, this is just a beginning. We will continue to evolve and do our best to deliver quality services for our constituents. Once again, our sincere gratitude to UNDP for their support and technical assistance. We hope to continue working with you on more development endeavors for the BARM. Good morning to everyone again. Maraming salamat po. Sukran. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Director General Ali. Salamat po for joining us today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
And again, UNDP is happy to support the Bangsamoro government as it begins its journey of utilizing data and other digital platforms in responding to the needs of the Bangsamoro people po.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. For our last presentation today, we have Dr. Raynabel Reyes, Chief Technical Advisor of the Pintig Lab, for a presentation called Into the Future, Moving Forward with Our Innovative Data Solutions Portfolio. Dr. Reyna is also an associate professor at the National Institute of Physics in the University of the Philippines, Diliman, where she heads the Data and Computation Research Group. She also serves as Director of Practices in Business Intelligence, Data Science Analytics, and Data Engineering at Z-Lift Solutions. She has a PhD in Astrophysics from Princeton University. Take it away, Dr. Reyna.
Thank you, Ms. Char. Good morning to all. It's my pleasure today to share with you the research agenda of the Pintig Lab for this year, 2022, and beyond, as we move forward with our innovative data solutions portfolio. Next slide, please. So our key research themes that we'll be working on this year include building on the work that we've done in the past 22 months on disease surveillance and modeling, on non-traditional data, developing non-traditional data sets and use cases for development, and in socioeconomic recovery in BARM. We will also be starting out new initiatives on these themes of women's empowerment as well as climate action with our partners. And I will be speaking in more detail about each of these themes in this talk. Next slide, please. So as we saw in the talks of Jonathan and Undersecretary Reyes, disease surveillance and modeling has been a key part of the work of Pintig Lab in support of Department of Health and FASTER, in particular the FASTER platform, which is the department's disease modeling platform for COVID-19. And as we saw, it provides real-time COVID-19 statistics, trends, and projections at the national level to provide decision-making, to inform decision-making, and all the way down to regional, provincial, municipality, city and municipality level, and up to barangay level, as we can see here in the sample analytics from the LG situational report for Quezon City. This year, we will continue our work, next slide please, in promoting the localization, the use of these analytics for anticipatory response in local governments through advisory and mentoring support. We've had great partnership with LGUs last year, especially with Pasig City, which has incorporated these analytics in their COVID-19 response at the local level, targeting high-risk areas, as well as informing decisions for granular lockdowns. This year, we'll continue with developing, we continue in the localization initiative by also developing and deploying a local data dashboard for LGUs in CAR, in the Cordillera Administrative Region, as a pilot initiative. And with these dashboards, local governments will be able to monitor and track, as well as to make targeted response in their local areas, using dashboards that have also local data, in addition to the national data that's available in the current FASTER platform. We're also making efforts in strengthening the institutionalization of the FASTER platform, and through capacity building, continued capacity building in data management, analytics, and disease modeling at national and local agencies, and also looking into the future, the application of this platform for other diseases such as dengue, tuberculosis, polio, as well as to prepare for the next pandemic. Next slide, please. On national non-traditional data for development, we are pursuing development of open data sets and research for development and the attainment of the SDGs using non-traditional and administrative data. And as we now appreciate, there's a large potential in complementing traditional and official statistics with non-traditional data from myriads of resources, including from internet and mobile devices. So with this, we are developing a COVID-19 impact and recovery dashboard with maps and trends for high-resolution indicators for mobility from Mapbox and Reyes, air quality from Space Nose satellite data, as well as household spending from fast-moving consumer goods from Nielsen, to showcase and get more granular and real-time data and indicators from these non-traditional sources. We are also working on research on COVID-19 impact on Filipino borrowers using loan volume and default rates from credit registry data. And with this research, we'll be able to profile the borrowers across the Philippines, and also inform strategies to improve credit access, especially for vulnerable groups, including the unbanked and underbanked, women, clients of microfinance institutions and cooperatives. Next slide, please. So this work is made possible by our partnerships with the Rockefeller Foundation, the World Bank, and the Development Data Partnership, which provides research data fellows with access to data from internet companies globally, including, as mentioned, Reyes, Mapbox, and Space Node. And the work on credit credit access is in partnership with Credit Information Corporation of the Philippines. Next slide, please. We have also done work on socioeconomic recovery in BARM in partnership with BPDA, Director General Adi, with MINDA, and the UNDP institutions and partnerships teams and peace teams. For the socioeconomic impact assessment of COVID-19 for BARM and Mindanao, we helped with the analysis on the impact of COVID-19 in the region, including impacts on households, short-term and long-term economy using economic modeling, as well as looking at government capacity to respond during the crisis, looking at survey data on government response, as well as implications to the BARM recovery and Mindanao 2020 plans and their implementation. And we will continue to engage in work with BARM moving forward. Next slide, please. We're also working on initiatives for women's empowerment and putting a focus on that this year in partnership with other country office teams at UNDP, including work to promote women's political participation, which involves collecting sex disaggregated indicators for voter registration and political leadership. So looking at women as both voters and as candidates and leaders, and working on policy research to address barriers to women's political participation. We'll also be looking at gender mainstreaming across all our projects, applying gender lens across our policy research and analysis, and in particular, promoting gender-responsive climate action initiatives that we'll talk about more in the next slides. So we have strong partnership with the UNDP's Climate Action Program team and Accelerator Lab to work on climate action initiatives this year. In particular, building an open knowledge and data platform for researchers and stakeholders across 3 focus areas. The first one is on climate finance, where we will help in mapping investments, gaps, and opportunities to promote investments and regulatory strengthening to encourage greener investments, especially from the private sector, and also focusing on nature-based solutions. We will also be working on circular economy, including database lining on plastic waste and marine litter, and profiling innovative solutions and alternatives to plastic production. So on the right here, you can see part of this project is using satellite imagery to look at and to detect and to monitor plastic waste in the Metro Manila river systems, in particular in this example in the Botas River, in partnership with our Japanese partners. And lastly, we'll be working also on disaster risk reduction, including climate sensitivity models and hazard maps to assess the extent, scope, and distribution of medium and long-term risks, and supporting the strengthening of the capacity of government agencies to better understand and plan for disaster and climate risks. The next slide, we will look at the key features of this climate knowledge and data platform we will be developing. First, the core part of it is the knowledge and data library, which would be a repository of curated documents, including research articles, working papers, policy briefs, and curated data sets with metadata and that is searchable and that can be downloadable and ready for use for research and policy analysis. We will also be including, of course, in the website, data visualizations that are embedded, and we will also include data dashboards on the focus areas of the projects to make the analysis and data meaningful and translatable for the stakeholders. There will also be community and opportunities board that will include posts for call for proposals, bids, requests, and other opportunities, and facilitate matching of donors, sponsors, and projects that are looking for funding and support. And finally, all of these will be curated and developed collaboratively with user groups for contributors and editorial reviewers from a community of practitioners and recognized experts, which will have the ability to contribute and approve content in these platforms. Next slide, please. So with this rich and full research agenda, we are inviting everyone to consider being partner of the Pintig Lab Net and be part of the Pintig Lab network. And there are many ways to partner, as I hope you can see. But here, just also giving some examples. If you want to use the data to participate in local governance, use the non-traditional data sets that we've talked about, maybe even others for your own research. For example, if you're a student with a thesis or dissertation along these research teams, will be a great opportunity to collaborate. If you have data that you can share, or research that you can share with the Pintig Lab network, if you're interested in doing peer review and co-writing policy notes, and co-creating and providing feedback on the data platforms and data sets. And of course, if you want to participate in the projects related to climate, COVID-19, BARM, and in knowledge sharing activities such as webinars such as these. And we are open to other ideas on partnership as well. So we'll end with a call to join the network, join this growing coalition of data geeks and social scientists, policymakers, government, in private sector, and the civil society. You may contact us in these email addresses, and we'll be happy to share more and set up a chat with you to see what we can do together. Looking forward to the collaborations we'll have this year, and thank you again for this opportunity. Back to you, Char.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reyna. And as you all have seen, they provided some email addresses in case you or your organization would like to keep in touch and support the initiative to nurture the data science communities here in the Philippines for public good and for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals here in the Philippines. Now, as you know, the second half of our activity this morning is a very exciting panel discussion among 4 key experts and partners of the Pintig Lab. But before we move on to the panel proper, we'd like to ask our audience to engage with us and answer another Mentimeter question. What are 3 areas of work that you are most interested to participate in? Our Mentimeter link is flashed on your screens. Your response will be of great help to us. Again, thank you everyone for your cooperation. Moving on to the panel discussion, I would like to first introduce our moderator for this panel. We have Mr. Dominic Ligot, data scientist of the Pintig Lab of UNDP Philippines. Doc Ligot is a data analyst, researcher, software developer, entrepreneur, and technologist. He is also an advocate for data literacy, data ethics, and social impact from data. His current work focuses on human rights, public health, food security, political risk, and fighting disinformation infodemics through the use of computational social science, remote sensing, artificial intelligence, and data engineering. Doc Ligot founded Zerolytics, a social impact data analytics company, and co-founded Data Ethics Philippines, an online community focused on social issues such as data privacy, data security, AI-driven discrimination, data liabilities, data ownership rights, and data poverty. Doc also founded the Analytics Association of the Philippines and is a board member of the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism. Doc's teams are back-to-back global winners in the NASA International Space Apps Challenge for data-driven dengue surveillance and COVID-19 global pandemic response monitoring. Doc Ligot also currently serves as the data scientist of UNDP's Pintig Lab, as mentioned previously. Doc holds postgraduates in data-driven marketing and advanced marketing research from Cornell University, clinical epidemiology from Utrecht University, and a degree in business administration from the University of the Philippines. We are happy to have you as our moderator for this panel, Doc Ligot. Welcome.
Morning, Shar.
Morning, sir. Now to introduce our set of panelists. First up, we have Assistant Secretary Francisco Cruz of the Department of Interior and Local Government. Assistant Secretary Francisco Revelo Cruz of DILG has been in government service for 31 years, where he served in various capacities, the latest of which is being the Assistant Secretary for Plans and Programs in concurrent capacity as Director of the agency's planning service. He earned his master's degree in Media and Governance from Keio University in Japan in 2009. Among his functions is to ensure that all plans, programs, and projects of all agencies and offices in the DILG are aligned with their mandate and responsive to the President's priorities. Welcome, sir. Our second panelist is Ms. Pia Faustino, Director for Social Impact and Sustainability of Thinking Machines Data Science, a technology consultancy that builds cloud, artificial intelligence, and data platforms to solve high-impact problems for organizations across Southeast Asia. Since joining Thinking Machines as an early employee in 2015, she has led numerous data warehousing, analysis, visualization, and capacity building projects from pitch to delivery with clients in finance, food and beverage, international development, education, and humanitarian response. Currently, she's leading the development of a new line of services at Thinking Machines, using spatial data science to help organizations scale out regenerative natural solutions to the climate crisis. Welcome, Ms. Pia. Our third panelist is Ms. Rebecca Malay, trustee of the Philippine Rural Reconstruction Movement, or the PRRM. She serves voluntarily as its Director of Advocacy and Development Cooperation, convener of the Global Call to Action Against Poverty Philippines, and sits as a regional council of the GCAP Asia. She represents GCAP in the Global South in the Global Steering Committee of the Coalition for the UN We Want, a coalition of civil society organizations seeking greater participation of CSOs and reforms in the UN system. She was the former chair of the Local Governance Policy Forum, a network of CSOs that engaged the government to enable the devolution and decentralization processes after the Local Government Code was adopted. She has also participated extensively in the international advocacy for the achievement of Agenda 2030 and the SDGs at the Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development, the High-Level Political Forum, and the UN General Assembly. She graduated with a degree in economics from UP and has a certificate in development economics from the African Program on Rethinking Development Economics in Cape Town, South Africa. Welcome, Ms. Malay. And our last panelist is Ms. Lorraine Goyena, Data Engineer of the Pintig Lab of UNDP Philippines. Her passion is designing technological solutions to solve real-world problems. She spent many years in global companies working in the roles of IT project manager, development engineer, solution architect, and enterprise architect. Before joining UNDP, Lorraine led the data management workstream of the Philippine government's IATF-IACT Technical Working Group. Welcome, Ms. Lorraine. Well, there you have it. What a formidable lineup of speakers for the panel discussion. Before I turn it over to Doc Ligot, I would like to again remind our audience to use the Zoom Q&A section to submit your questions to the panelists. We will have an opportunity to ask them during the question and answer portion. Apologies for this slide that you're seeing right now. This question and answer portion will happen after the panel discussion. Again, the Q&A will happen after the panel discussion. Again, thank you so much for your cooperation, and turning over the floor to Doc Ligot for the panel proper.
Thanks, Shar, and good morning, everyone, and good morning to our esteemed panel. Before we break it up to the panelists, I just want to preface this section with 5 numbers, 9, 7, 5, 3, and 1. They sound like odd numbers, but actually these numbers represent basically a turning point, which I believe is happening before our eyes. It's been 9 years since an article came out in the Harvard Business Review written by Tom Davenport and DJ Patil, saying that data scientists will be the sexiest job of the 21st century. No one's ever heard of that term before then. Also 9 years coincidentally was Republic Act 10173 and 10175, more otherwise known as the Data Privacy Act, and the anti-cybercrime law came into being. And I believe that's significant because for the first time, data and technology is now a centerpiece in legislation. And we have more legislation coming up that are technology-centric, like the SIM Card Registration Act and other things. It's been 7 years since the World Economic Forum coined the term the Fourth Industrial Revolution in 2015. And according to the World Economic Forum, the Fourth Industrial Revolution builds on the previous 3 revolutions. But the difference is data. Because of data, machines will be independent of humans. Society will be data-driven. But people didn't really believe it back then. But I think things have changed a lot since 2015. It's been 7 years since a project called DARE, or Data Analytics Rekindling Employment, was triggered by the APEC. And this was actually the inception of the AAP in 2018. According to APEC, analytics is bound to become the hottest job sector in the region, if not the world. And again, back then, people couldn't tell the difference between data analytics and IT. And then it's been 3 years since an outbreak of a flu-like virus in Wuhan, China started and has gripped the world in a global pandemic. And of course, apart from the health challenges that we continue to face, one outcome of this pandemic is it's forced everyone to go digital. We are now having this conference online, which wouldn't otherwise happen if not for the pandemic. And it's been a year since the Pintig Lab came online. And if you've heard from Dr. Reyes about the great stuff the Pintig Lab, along with its partners, are doing. So if you look back in time, everything happening today is a logical succession of events. And now we are here. And we are talking about data-driven interventions, data-driven social impact, data-driven policy. So I want that to be the kind of the trigger for the panel today. I'll go in reverse order. I'll start with my colleague, Lorraine, for the reactions, Lorraine, to the presentations.
It's encouraging to see that data is now taking center stage. It's becoming more important and it's becoming more mainstream. So we're talking about data-driven decision making, data-driven policy making. So instead of just talking about it, we're actually seeing it in action and we're making plans around it. That's very, very encouraging to see.
Okay, thanks, Lorraine. Turn it over to Pia from Thinking Machines. Thinking Machines has been at the forefront of data-driven social action for years. So what's your reaction to the discussion this morning?
Similar to Lorraine, super encouraging to see all the work that's been done, and also just taking a step back to realize the progress that has been made in the last 2 years. I mean, I worked with Lorraine and I worked with Jonathan and Yusek Berhere at the early part of the COVID pandemic, and really imagine the challenge of digital transformation at the speed of COVID, right? Because it was really a painful but so valuable process. And the presentation that that Jonathan gave at the beginning just made me realize, appreciate, the incredible advancements that have been made. There's still a lot more work to be done, for sure. That's for sure. But somehow there's really a silver lining in this crisis, right? The crisis has presented an opportunity to adapt to what's needed at the pace needed, right? So we have to really appreciate how far we've come. And also, I really wanted to support that statement that Jonathan also mentioned earlier, that and I think he pulled that quote from you, right? The nexus of data science and social science. As someone who is not a traditionally trained a computer programmer or computer scientist, I came from a communications background, a journalism background. I completely agree that it's not just about can we build it, it's what should we build and who are we building for and why are we building it? I think those are the main questions that we need to learn how to get better at answering, so that we can really see our technology translate into impact, in the real world, on real people.
Well said, Pia. Can I turn over to Ma'am Becky? Just an immediate reaction. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, and thanks to the presenters. They're really very good. It is really amazing how digitalization has really enabled us to get information that we need as quickly as we need it, and then make decisions as nimbly as possible. So I appreciate the use of data and technology in the decision making that the DOH has done for their COVID response, and then also with the BARM in terms of instituting the transparency that is needed for their local development plan. So it's exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, we are also very excited. Turning over to ASEC, Frank, I think you wanted to also show a presentation as a reaction to this morning's discussion. Take it away, ASEC.
No, I just good morning everyone. I would just like to make a comment then doon sa naging presentation earlier, and I agree that we have to have more informed decisions if we integrate. We will have a more informed decision if we integrate empirical evidence on public policies. This actually realizes the value of data in the formulation of our programs, projects, and activities in response to the occurring needs at the local level. It is worthy to note that decision-making should not merely rely on imported blueprints, and instead, there should be more targeted and refined based on context-specific data, similar to what the Bangsamoro Planning and Development Authority's measures to conduct socioeconomic impact assessment to evaluate the real situation on the ground. Furthermore, at a time when financial or economic uncertainties stare us in the face, efficient and judicious utilization of resources are critical. And this can only be done when we have a data-supported, data-driven, deliberate, and strategic allocation of whatever resources we have for effective and efficient resource management. Simply put, we cannot at this point afford to waste our resources, and data-supported budgeting and programming is critical and should be a way of life for both national and local governments. By the way, I've been a witness to how the IATF works, how sila yung Secbergere, with their the data analytics technical working group and screening and validation committee, where the local government units actually file an appeal whenever a classification of the risk classification or the quarantine classification is being discussed. And I saw how data had played a very big role in suggesting to the IATF, the IATF principals, the decisions to make or the actions that they should undertake. And even in a very actually highly political atmosphere din, hindi may iwasan niya sa decision making. The said subcommittees or a technical working group had stood pat on its recommendation, simply because their recommendation is backed or supported by data. Kaya medyo mahirap laruin talaga, o mahirap mas madaling idepensa yung mga paninindigan or yung decision kapag ito ay data-driven or data-supported. And that is where I think the IATF, through the efforts then of, among others, sila Yusek Bergeri has made the situation a lot easier to deal with, no? Especially during the early weeks and months of this pandemic. And until now, data has been playing a very critical role in the decision making of the IATF.
Thanks, ASEC Frank. Actually, now that you're on that topic, one important area for evidence-based policy is the implementation of the Mandanas ruling. And the ILG is obviously at the forefront of this. Maybe you can share a little bit about how the ILG is looking to strengthen capabilities of local government, evidence-based policy. And I think the ILG and the UNDP Pintig Lab have also been working together on SDGs. Anything you would like to share in that regard?
Yeah, first of all, actually, I would like, well, maybe I should skip this presentation and maybe we can just share this with the participants. But let me just say how thankful we are and grateful we are to UNDP for their very vibrant partnership with the DILG, especially during this time. In fact, last week we talked about an initiative wherein the data at the provincial level will be determined, no? And that they will be conducting a rapid field assessment, and then we'll try to look at data at the provincial level. That is very important or relevant to the DILG, simply because in the shift of this as an offshoot of this Supreme Court ruling, the DILG in a way will be shifting its focus or direction in terms of engaging local government units, no? Whereas before you have seen the DILG from the provincial down to the barangay level, no? Very visible kasi kami yung link ng national doon sa local governments and the people, no? But for now, since the local government code naman has meron tinatawag na hierarchy of accountability, wherein yung higher LGUs should be assuming din or exercising their oversight over their component local government units. Yung resources and the initiatives of the DILG, especially in the first few months or years of this Mandanas ruling, especially dito sa transition period, we will be focusing more on the provincial level, no? Kasi yun talaga that is where yung alignment of programs or alignment of priorities or plans doon ang gagaling yan. And that is where also the lower component LGUs naman should align their own programs and projects, no? Doon sa nabanggit ko kanina about engagement doon sa rapid field assessment and working for with the provincial government's data. Napakahalaga nung mga information na yon, ng mga data that we will be able to gather from the provincial governments to beef up our own capacity building interventions to local government units, especially doon sa without the data kasi hindi magiging strategic yung aming initiative, eh. So kailangan namin yung data talaga, and we are pushing hard talaga on making sure that our initiatives are supported by data or evidence available at the local level para mas maging effective naman kami. Remember dito sa naging decision ng Supreme Court dito sa Mandanas, many government agencies including the DILG medyo nabawasan yung sarili niya resources, eh. So yung aming limited resources, kailangan very focused yan at alam namin kung saan gagamitin, and that can only happen if our decision making is supported by data or evidence.
Yeah.
Ayun lang.
Thanks, ASEC Frank. That's an excellent segue, no? So maybe back to Ma'am Becky. Now that we know, at least from local government, we're hoping that more data is being used. On your area naman, which is more dealing with grassroots marginalized communities, what's the experience or the view on how data can be useful in your area?
Yeah. Consistent with our advocacy for a people-centered sustainable development, we need data that will capture the real situation of those who have been left behind, no? In terms of government services, in terms of private sector investments, etc. So what data are most important for local governments to analyze in from our perspective. I think it's important to have very clear and very good poverty disaggregate data, disaggregated by gender, to see the intersections of impacts on women, no? And girls, no? Especially girls and women. And then, of course, other sectors, no? The most marginalized and the poorest are actually indigenous peoples and fisher folk, no? So those are the two sectors that really have fallen into, you know, the direst situations of poverty. So we also want to look at data on inequality. It has to really come out there, an analysis of the political economy in the areas. Yung income and wealth disparities are very important because it's important to know who owns the businesses, including those that operate the illicit economy, especially in conflict areas, because that's, you know, that's SDG 16, no? SDG 16.4. It's a target of SDG to look at, for example, illicit arms trade. Ilan yung mga armas na meron, no? So, and then it's also important to look at these inequality data for the government to be able to increase their own source revenues, no? If you're able to identify clearly who owns businesses, etc., na hindi pala registered or you know, are hiding their revenues, maaayos yung tax collection. And then also the monies that can be collected are being used to invest in social protection measures, including universal health care, which is very important right now. And then also to guide the development planning in general, in particular in the determination of infrastructure development and other big item investments. No? Also in the procurement of essential services. It can actually give information in prioritizing what needs to be procured. No? And may I just also say that technology and data are just means of implementation, but they're very important. No? I'm a long advocate for sustainable development since I started working in development for 30 years ago. And I think the goals must first serve as the guide. No? The SDGs serve a very good guide, but Agenda 2030 is the more important one because it's more integrated and more strategic. No? And then besides infrastructure support such as connectivity, which will give access for people to use the data, there should be a program to enable the use of data such as capacity building, improving the capability of those who are already working on them, and then increasing the capability to analyze and make the data useful. For example, when you look at climate and vulnerability assessments, if you put them together, it will help you determine the right plans in setting up infrastructures for disaster risk reduction and management. Appropriate technology choices should be made for sustainable development. It's not just being modern in terms of the technology, but appropriate technology choices for sustainable development must be emphasized. It's one of our, big push, no? In terms of the technology facilitation mechanism, in terms of the STI talks at the UN level, at the UN high-level political forum level. So these are important because, for example, if you want to be climate smart and then you talk about climate smart agriculture, it's not about using AI and drones for planting GMOs, no? Because they'll probably be resistant to a lot of bugs and all of these insects that are preying on plants, but it's not sustainable. So it's actually, giving people the appropriate technology for choices for sustainable development. So that probably is a more long-term view rather than an immediate recovery, but recovery tool. But it should be put in mind. No? So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Becky. I think your points resonate well with ASEC Frank. At least with data, at least you have a common ground to debate. No, it's not just rhetorical. You can actually debate the evidence or lack of evidence. Minsan ng usapan.
Yeah.
Okay, can I shift to Pia? Thinking Machines has always been at the forefront. You have an impressive portfolio of innovation, especially in the social development sector. You work with government also. Can you give us and the audience a little bit of kind of describe what do you see are the emerging trends where government and social impact partners can pursue? And talking about Thinking Machines, what's your kind of what's a good environment that can help these kinds of policy making thrive?
Yeah, thank you, Dominic. So the emerging trends on data or public innovation, like I actually, so you asked two questions, like what's the emerging trends? What's the conducive environment? I think the emerging trends will create the conducive environment. So I'll answer with four ideas. So these emerging trends that I think will help push forward data-driven policymaking. One is a focus on human-centered analytics, human-centered tech. Number two, like maybe a move to considering the cloud-based computing infrastructure. Number three, thinking of analytics as something really beyond the IT department and embedding analytics capability throughout organizations. And then four, democratizing data access. So about the first one, human-centered analytics. So, when it's kind of a best practice in technology design to always think about who am I building this technology for? Who is going to use this tool? And what problem am I solving for them? I think there's a lot of tools and apps that get built and then fail to get adoption, right? So we want to avoid that moving forward. How do we actually build tools that will solve problems for people and that people will use? And I think there's a best practice of building data products and data tools as well, analytical tools that constantly ask, who's making a decision based on this? Who's taking action based on this? Who is this for? Are they actually going to use it? And just as an example, I think the example of the IATF's experience with using data for the COVID response offers so many lessons here and accelerated the demonstration of these trends. So like, for example, during the COVID response, I remember one of the IT leaders of Philinvest Foundation, they were trying to figure out how to get testing labs to submit testing data in a more timely manner, in compliance with standards. And this very high-ranking officer was talking to lab encoders, right? He was asking them, what's the problem? What can I make for you that will help you do your job, right? And that led to some breakthroughs in increasing the data submission from labs. So I think that's a great example of human-centered analytics. For moving to the cloud, there's a huge trend in taking your infrastructure and instead of going with on-premise, you're going to the cloud. It's shown that it's more cost-effective, it's more scalable. And I think, again, the IATF experience showed that because I don't think we could have scaled the infrastructure probably at the pace needed, right? We couldn't have been as flexible and dynamic if we had kind of fixed machines. So we were able to scale up the infrastructure to meet the business needs at a very, very fast pace. The third point, which is analytics beyond IT. So I think traditionally, like IT departments have that's data management has been their domain, but IT is a lot about getting data from one place to the other, right? I think there's a different set of skills, a different discipline required for asking questions of the data that are really useful to the decision makers. And this is where I think government organizations, we're going to see them building more of their in-house analytics capability and having people who have data analysis skills sit next to decision makers and asking them, okay, what do you need to know? How can I show it to you? What chart do you want to see, right? On a very fast basis. And these are people that need to have domain knowledge. They have to understand the context in which the data is used. So again, like during the COVID response, we saw that the DOH hired their own data analytics team that worked directly with the epidemiologists, with the hospitals. So this was they've gone on to become like an institution within DOH through the Quick Action Surveillance Unit. And the fourth point, which is democratizing data access. We've heard about open data for many, many years now, but there's still a long way to go. I think government data tends to be siloed in different agencies. So there needs to be more, and we've seen that again with the COVID response. It wasn't just beneficial to share, it was absolutely necessary to share data in order to respond to the huge social challenge, the huge social crisis. And the crises are just going to keep coming. We have climate change coming, we have disasters coming, we absolutely have to get data shared across agencies and shared with the public more regularly. And that means disaggregated data being shared with the public. And super kudos to the DOH for biting the bullet there. It's a painful process to share your data with the public because it's going to be open to scrutiny. But that process, although painful, it does result in improving the data quality. It really does. There's going to be, I think, we were going to see more proactive versus reactive sharing of data rather than waiting for someone to request it, putting it out there and seeing seeing what people will do with it and how people can use it. So those are the 4 trends that I hope will make data-driven decision-making the norm as we go forward.
Thanks, Pia. And I think those are really the 4 also part of the 4 macro trends that comprise the 4th industrial revolution. Data is every bit of it. So I'll turn it over to Lorraine, my colleague from Pintig Lab. Just jumping off from Pia, talking about cloud, talking about infrastructure. You've also worked in government before Pintig Lab. Can you share a little bit about data management and how that affects, let's say, crisis response, and not just limited to COVID, but also climate action and other things you've experienced working within Pintig Lab?
Taking the experience from past crises and moving these best practices forward to what's coming for us. So the next that we're thinking about is climate change, but really these best practices are reusable for the next challenge that we will encounter. So first, of course, we keep talking about the importance of data. Of course, the first thing that we have to work on is data. So data doesn't just appear there, ready to use. So a lot of engineers have to work to make sure that the data that's driving our decisions is flowing fast and efficiently, and is of good enough quality that we can really make good decisions based on them. So aside from that, it also has to be there on time. It has to be so reliable and on time. So it's always there and it's ready to use. And of course, when we talk about data is not neutral. So there can be your version of the data, there can be my version of the data. So for data to efficiently drive this decision making, and more importantly, to be the foundation of cooperation, it has to be shared. So we all have to be looking at the same data. And this is where what we've been talking about comes in. There has to be open access to data. It has to be democratized. It has to be in the hands of people who need to use them. So that said, we don't always have to start from scratch. So every time there's a crisis, we talk about building things, but really a lot of what we need is already there. So we start where we are with what we already have, and then we go from there to build what we need. So exactly what we need and no more. So we use our funds efficiently, and as we go along, we use the data that we've generated to guide our decisions. So another very good thing that I've seen is that the response is usually centered on LGUs, and the LGUs are enabled by many organizations and facilitated by the national government. We've seen replication of best practices among LGUs. So sometimes LGU to LGU, and sometimes more deliberately by the central national government, replicating practices from one LGU to another that needs a bit of help. What we've seen also is that we cannot afford to let somebody else solve our problems for us anymore. So everybody needs to be as stakeholders. So we've been seeing this recently. So when we deal with crisis, it's now a whole of government response. So it's not just the COVID crisis, for example, was not just a health crisis that was handled by the DOH. It was by all of government. So DILG was there, DOST was there, the OCD was there. So everybody really contributed to the solutions. And aside from government, we saw civil society organizations, we saw the private sector pitching in and development agencies, of course, and ordinary citizens. So with the data available for all, we saw a lot of people contributing to the solution. So to coordinate all of these efforts, we need a venue to do that. And the government was, the IETF in particular, was quick to set up PWGs where everybody was welcome. And this organization also reorganized itself very, very fast, very, very quickly. So we saw frequent changes in how that organization was managed to address the changing situation. Another one that's funny, of course, is the communication venues that was online. So nobody liked it at first. So it was a new way of doing things. It was inefficient. It was impersonal. But now in hindsight, we see that it was actually key to the fast action that happened. Because without these online communication venues, we couldn't have done meetings so fast. We couldn't have exchanged information so fast. So in the pre-COVID era na, it was unthinkable to have 10 meetings in a day. Diba? But with the way that we did it, it was possible and it was really game-changing. So,
Thanks, Lorraine. Actually, one thing that people didn't realize, do you guys realize that since we went online, nawala na yung Filipino time? Back in the day, people are typically, used to, be there 30 minutes late, 15 minutes late. Ngayon, if you're late for 1 minute, everyone is already, up in arms, on online. So it's a good thing, I think. Okay, so
instant messaging din, when you're not there in 1 minute, everybody starts messaging.
If you're half a minute late, you get a bombardment. So, sige, of course, we'd love to talk the whole day, but unfortunately, we don't have time. So I want to go back to ASEC Frank. Sir, given all of the messages today, some takeaways for the audience before we give it back to the host on your end.
Well, we've seen how valuable data is moving forward, and kami, even in the DILG would want to make all our decisions, all our policies really supported by data or evidence, because that's the only way we can be really effective, and that's the only way we'll be able to fulfill our mandate. When I mentioned earlier about us focusing on provincial governments, that doesn't mean that we will be actually abandoning the lower LGUs. Consistent or in relation to what Ma'am Rebecca has mentioned, yung aming seal of good local governance, that's the performance measurement tool namin. That is something that we will be transitioning also from one which is which shows the compliance of local governments to certain laws or policies. What we want now in the post-Mandanas era or governance landscape is to make this a very results-oriented or results-obtaining performance measurement, especially with the additional resources that they will get from the national government. Plus, that's the only way we can really measure yung nasa sustainable development goals na sinasabi. Ang mga local governments have a stake on that. But what we want in our seal of good local governance is that we will be setting certain targets based on the capacities din naman and performance of local government units, but they should be aware then and cognizant of certain things that they should be delivering to their constituents. And that is very material in the way we will be engaging the local government units beginning 2022. Yung resulta na yung hahanapin namin, resulta and outcome rather than mere compliance, yes or no. Yung mga ganon, At mahalaga yon moving forward. And the results of that will be inputted naman dun sa aming capacity development agenda for the local government units. For them in the coming years, to be more effective naman in obtaining or getting the results that not only the national government, halimbawa like the DLG wants, but also the demands and expectations of their constituents, the people, the very people that they serve. Yun lang. At maraming salamat.
Thanks, Asek Frank. Ika nga, there's a saying, what gets measured gets managed. So now that we are measuring, hopefully we are managing better. And I think we fully support the DILG's thrust here. Going over to Miss Becky, ma'am, any last takeaways from your end?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dominic. I think it should be put in mind that people and communities should not be seen as sources of data, no? They're not just sources of data. They should be able to participate and be empowered by data. I think from invisibility, I think it is important to bring them to another level, which is inclusion. No? So thank you.
There's actually a new term that's emerging called data poverty. You know, if your data does not exist, it's like you don't exist, and that's a big issue that we need to now address. That data is the center. You know, I think it's good that you brought this up. Yeah. Turning over to Pia, takeaways from you and Thinking Machines.
I think everything has been said very well. I have nothing more to add. I'd like to get to work. Let's all work together and build things that are useful. Yeah.
Okay. Lorraine, anything from you? Pintig Lab, last takeaways?
That's exciting. So yung call to action, and with this webinar, we're getting a lot of participation. So hoping that we get to work with a lot more people, a lot more sectors.
Thanks, Lorraine. Sige, before I turn it over, I just want to end with two quotes. No? One quote is, I think we mentioned in the last webinar, everybody loves to say data is the new oil, but just like oil, data is also the new pollution. So we need to also make sure that our data is clean. We need to make sure that we use data responsibly. Data is the new weapon. Data is the new poverty. It's a data-driven world. And I think apropos, to echo Ma'am Becky, we are not just sources of data. We are the data. So we also have to keep remembering we're dealing with people, we're dealing with lives. And the quote that I think best captures this is one quote that I got from Sam Harris. No, you're not controlling the storm. You're not lost in the storm. You are the storm. Data is the storm, and we are the data. So with that, turning it over to Shar for the Q&A. I'm sure people have questions to ask. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Doc Ligot, for that very masterful moderation of the panel discussion. Really great to hear insights from all of our stakeholders, from local government, national government, CSOs, and the private sector as well. And also, as you've mentioned, this activity is to contribute to the call to action to nurture and to foster data science communities for response and recovery work. And I think the panel discussion encapsulated that, and all of our panelists were good representations of the partners that we currently have. Now, we will proceed to our very brief question and answer portion. Given our very limited time, unfortunately, we cannot accommodate all of the questions that were submitted to us. We only have time for one question. And I think this question would be best answered by some of our colleagues from Pintig Lab. The question is, were the data gathered from Pintig Lab publicly accessible without any government restrictions? So checking in if Doc Reyna or Ms. Lorraine can answer this question.
Hello, Shar. Yes, I can address it. Thanks for the questions. Good question. For different data sets, the access actually can be different depending on the source as well. But for many data sets, they're actually publicly available, and we share them in our communications, and we'll be happy to also share these links with you if you're interested in anything in particular. For some, they can be shared by request or through collaboration. So for example, as we said, we were happy to co-develop research, including for thesis and dissertation research for students, or for publication of papers and policy papers. And so we're happy also to work with partners on this. And then also just to to bring up the importance and that we're also encouraging more sources of data from, especially from private sector partners, where we can work together to develop the data so that it's does not so that it's anonymized, and that we're under data privacy and data security guidelines, but also we get the relevant data and information available to the public and to researchers and to stakeholders who will be taking advantage of this data to inform policy and decision making. So yeah, that's my quick response to that.
Thanks so much, Doc Reyna. That's it for our question and answer portion, because we're a bit pressed for time. And I know it's 12 noon, but we have one last part of our program for this morning. We really appreciate everyone staying with us and sticking with us, even though we're running a bit over time. Now, to formally close our program, we have with us Attorney Christian R. Ablan, Undersecretary for Administration, Finance, and Freedom of Information of the Presidential Communications Operations Office, or the PCOO. Undersecretary Ablan is concurrently the Director of the FOI Project Management Office. He is a lawyer by profession and holds degrees in Public Policy and National Security Administration. He represents the Philippines at the International Conference of Information Commissioners and is active in open government and other transparency initiatives. Turning over the floor to Undersecretary Ablan. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Char. It's very difficult to conduct a closing remarks. Everyone is talking about data science, data analytics, data-driven decision-making. People should also be talking about data overload. There's just so much data to talk about, and I don't know how to end this very educational and fascinating webinar. First and foremost, I'd like to congratulate the organizers of this activity, the UNDP, represented by its leader here in the Philippines, Dr. Selma Ramachadran, as well as the Analytics Association of the Philippines. Here we have its chair and president, Mr. Colin Christie, our friends in Pintig Lab, Doc Ligot, and everyone else who spoke before me, beginning at 10 a.m. This morning. I sure hope you're still here with us. We really learned a lot this morning. And for the longest time in the private sector, in civil society, as well as in the international development sector, they've always been using data science and data analytics for their decision-making. They've known that. Us here in government, insofar as the national government is concerned, and maybe some majority of our local government, we've really relied on traditional data, as what was mentioned by Jonathan Blue Hodder earlier. We do rely on traditional media, traditional data, and one of the things that is difficult with traditional data is that the data gets stale very fast. I'll give you an example. I work in freedom of information, or access to information, and a few years ago we approached the Philippine Statistics Authority because we do rely on our agencies like NEDA and PSA for the data for us to drive our decisions. And we approach them and include some access to information and open data questions on its functional literacy, education, and mass media survey, or the FLEMS survey. And it was conducted in 2019. We did not get the results because they surveyed around 25 million households until 2 years later. By that time, the information that we received was stale. That's why moving on here at the PCOO, we are trying to procure data gathering, survey taking that is in real time. Us in government, we have to realize that we now live in a VUCA world. Now, we've been living in a VUCA world for the past 10, 15 years, a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And traditional ways of collecting data should be continued, but should not be exclusively used. As we can see, the COVID pandemic gave us an opportunity for us in government to pivot and use data science to make policy decisions. It forced the Department of Health really to reach out to UNDP, Pintig Lab, and Thinking Machines, and Ateneo de Manila University to really fast track the development of many data science and data analytics driven programs such as the FASTER, the COVID Kaya, and other software development that we had with gathering all of the data and making the decisions. And something that's also important, Char and everyone else, is that the data produced by data analytics and data science is not just useful for policymakers. It's not just useful for the UNDP. It's also useful for you and me as individuals. Every day since the start of the pandemic, I've waited for 4 p.m. in the afternoon so that the Department of Health and the IATF can release the results of how many new cases do we have. And by finding out how many new cases of COVID-19 we have per day, I make a decision on whether I can visit my friend, I can see my my colleague in the office, or I should work from home. So data is not only important for policymakers, it's also important for individuals. As what was mentioned by Becky Malay and Ma'am Lorraine a while ago, discussing the use of data in local governance. We've also heard from my MNSA classmate, engineer Haj Ali, on how they were able to use data for the development of their Bangsamoro development tracker. And I do hope Pintig Lab, AAP, and UNDP would continue to help out other regions, not just BARM. We've also heard from Dr. Reyes, and the future looks very bright for data science and data analytics, as it made my face smile when I heard that there are current data developments for women empowerment and on climate change adaptation. We heard from the panel, which was masterfully, as what was mentioned by Char a while ago, moderated by Doc Ligot, to request for information or get some information from ASIC Frank Cruz from the DILG on how data will be used for implementation of the Mandanas Garcia ruling, with local governments having an increase in their national income share. We also heard from my friend, a biking friend, Pia Faustino, who's now with Thinking Machines, on what's the future, and emphasizing on democratizing data. We use real-time data, but we also should use government data. And I think we should balance using traditional data and the new data that we have to make our policy decisions. Again, the future really looks bright, and I do hope Pintig Lab stays. Now that our discussion today is what did we do, or what did the DOH, IATF, Pintig Lab, and everyone else has done for the past 2 years in response to the COVID, and what else can be done in the future for future development. I do hope Pintig Lab stays in order to help us in other sectors that may not be that open yet to data science. Many parts of government, many clusters in government is still there to be explored. We do have human development and poverty reduction. Data science can be used there. Participatory governance can use a lot of data science, as well as our security and justice system. So many things where data science can be used. Our theme today is rising together. You know all of the saying that a rising tide lifts all ships. And I do hope that the data that we have and that we will be using raises all of us together. Before we end, I'd like to take a look at our Mentimeter and see and use data to find out what areas do people really like to work in. And we see here on the screen that 22% would like to use data to participate in local governance. And second to that, we have 21% who would like to use data, participate in knowledge sharing activities, webinars, and fora, more things like these. And coming in third is participate in climate related projects. So maybe that's the next frontier, no? After using data science to address the COVID-19 pandemic, maybe next thing for us to use data science is to adapt to climate change and to reduce our disaster risks. Maybe I can ask Char to also look where do our audience come from. I think I've seen prior slide before, 41% come from government, coming in a distant second are from the academe, and third is from the private sector. And again, I would like to congratulate on behalf of my Principal Secretary Andanar of the Presidential Communications Operations Office and our Project Management Office of FOI Philippines. Congratulations to all of the organizers, UNDP, Pintig Lab, and AAP, as well as the speakers and the panelists, moderators, and organizers. Maraming salamat po. God bless you. And let's all take care and have a good health.
Thank you so much, Undersecretary Ablan, for also highlighting how data is now shaping not just the government's policy decisions, but also our own individual choices day in and day out. Very important thing to highlight. We are also now presented with this opportunity to work together, to rise together, as Yusek Ablan said, to use data for empowerment and for development. Before we end this program, we would like to encourage everyone to please share with us your insights once more and to participate in an exit survey after this program has finished. We would really like to hear from you. We also would like to let everyone know that we have a post-activity newsletter, which we will be sending out to all registered participants of this webinar. Again, next slide, please. We would also, again, like to thank all of our distinguished panelists for joining us this morning. Again, we would like to encourage everyone to please reach out to Pintig Lab if you would like to support our initiative. Their contact details are on your screens, so please do reach out. We want to grow this community even further. That's it for us this morning. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to all of our speakers, our panelists. Once again, this is Charlene Balaan of the United Nations Development Program. Thank you for joining us and thank you for staying with us this morning. Maraming salamat po. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Picture.
Oh, we would like to ask our panelists to please stay so that we can take one commemorative photo of everyone. Okay, let's see how we'll do this. If we can just ask of all of our panelists and to please join us. Switch on your cameras so that we can take one quick commemorative photo. All right. May we ask our Coffee Creatives team to please take the selfie? I'll also take one screenshot. Okay, in 3, 2, 1. One more. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your time. And again, thank you to all of our partners, to the Analytics Association of the Philippines, for working with us in hosting the Stakeholders Forum. Maraming salamat po. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Happy Friday.